Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway for the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is episode 89, and we are talking women in horror. I am Liz Williams, and I'm joined by
Eric Lee,
Mike Campbell, and super special guest,
Gwen Callahan.
Hey, Gwen's
Yay!
back.
Yay!
So, Gwen, the last time we had you on, was that for the Wizard World discussion with
Yes,
Sander?
with Nicholas Brendan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's been it's like a year.
Yeah, and then I think we've also done at least one Portland Horror Film Festival discussion, right?
At least one.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe just one. Maybe one.
Yeah, so that would have probably been May.
May have
last year?
Yeah, last year.
Or
yeah.
2 years ago, maybe even. Oh my God, we've been doing this for so long.
But Wizworld came and went. What happened?
Our guy, they canned our guy.
Oh, man.
Max was let go. I as important as it was for us to get the Wizard World show and tell session, I think that's a sinking ship. So
I saw a couple pictures from
'Cause they let him
the
down.
event, and it did not look happy.
no, I mean, because I think
So you're saying we latched ourselves to a sinking ship.
no, I think we got one of the last lifeboats.
Oh,
is what I'm saying. So
I like that better.
yeah.
That sounds a lot
Yeah,
better.
I like that better.
So yeah, welcome back, Gwen. Gwen Callahan, as you may have figured out by now, is the director for the Portland Horror Film Festival and also the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival here in Portland, Oregon. And so, Gwen, are you actually are you in movie acquisition mode yet for the Portland Horror Film Festival?
Yes, for actually for both Portland Horror Film Festival and HP Lovecraft Film Festival, submissions are open on Film Freeway. And since it's Women in Horror Month at Portland Horror Film Festival for every year since we started, we've been doing free submissions, free film submissions for women directors during the month of February. And that's on Film Freeway. I think it's filmfreeway.com/Portland Horror Film Festival.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Nice.
Very, very cool.
And I think I know.
Have you seen over the last couple of years? Have you seen an uptick in the number of female directed horror films?
We did the first year that we did it. So I think the very first year that we started out, we weren't aware of our ability to hey, we can just make submissions free for women. We were still kind of figuring it out. So between the first year, I think we had 12% of our submissions were women directors.
Okay.
And then the first year that we did free submissions for women, it bounced up to 25%. And then after that, it's kind of leveled out around 35%.
All right.
Still solid.
Well, but after this,
Yep.
the global worldwide influencers that is the Scariest Things podcast.
Yes.
It'll explode,
Yeah,
hopefully.
it looks like
we're going to hit 40. We're going to hit 40.
So Rachel Pratt, I believe you listen to our podcast, and I know you actually have been submitting your short film around. So send it to Gwen.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
And the important thing is
Portland
that our jurors don't know who has submitted under the Women in Horror banner and who hasn't. So there's no bias when we're reviewing films. We just look at all the short films, all the medium length films, all the feature films, and then judge them according to their own merits. And it's interesting to see that the selections kind of fall under the same percentages as the submissions. So when we had 25% submissions by women directors, 25% of the selections were by women directors.
Yeah. Now,
Cool.
Sight and Sound Unseen and Unheard, are you able to pick out the women directors in a sort of a blind taste test when you get all these huge submissions?
Sometimes if the film has particularly feminist overtones, you can kind of wonder was this written by a woman or was it directed by a woman? But most of the time I'm not really thinking about that. I'm thinking about how well is this story being played out on the screen? How good is the camera work? How good is the lighting? Is the sound good? Is the acting good?
Yeah, and I think this is what you are doing. I think other film festivals are I think they're trying to encourage female ownership and direction of films. And I think most of the films that we're going to discuss today were probably directed in the last 10 years, as I'm guessing. There's a few outliers, and I bet you Mr. Campbell may be the one who's going to bring some of the older stuff. If I'm going to take a roll of the dice here.
No, you're totally wrong.
Okay.
Completely wrong.
Mine are all more than 10 years old.
Oh, this will be interesting.
For both of mine.
Okay.
My top two.
Okay,
Yes.
If I'm going to hold my guesses till the end, but I have a couple of suspicions.
Write them down. Put them in an
I did
envelope.
not put. I did
Yeah,
not.
open it
afterwards.
I did not put Ida Lupino.
Ida Lupino.
Yeah, from the 1950s. She directed the Hitchhiker.
Oh my gosh! So some knowledge
I
drop
did-
from Mike
I did
Campbell.
not put Ida Lupino because I don't know that she did much other horror than that, and that was 1954, I believe.
1953.
What was the Gwen? Do you recall the name of the short film that played at the Portland Horror Film Festival last year? That was the group of 1980s sort of new wave.
Yes.
Those, the darlings.
The Darlings.
Yeah.
That was a
that
great film.
one.
That was a great film, and that was female directed. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And written.
And written. Yes.
And that was part of, I don't know if it's out or if it's still doing the festival rounds, but it's part of an anthology
Yeah.
of 5 pieces that were all written and directed by women.
That was great. Did you see that one, Eric? Did you
Yeah,
get a chance
no,
to
that
see
was
it?
great.
Yeah.
It was. It felt like you had all the sweatbands you needed,
Yes.
and the it felt like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
It was shot.
taking
It was
on
shot in
werewolves.
standard definition, and it looked like a 1980s VHS cassette.
There's a bunch of these things. I just saw, and I know that Liz also just saw VFW.
Oh yeah.
And that
Yeah.
has a similar kind of an 80s straight to video grindhouse vibe to it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a thing. So, Liz,
Definitely.
you've got apparently some fabulous quote here to lead us into our discussion.
Well, this is what guided my choices. And a lot of women will know this quote because it's from, kind of feminist icon Margaret Atwood. And she says that it's on the discord between men and women. So this is what led my choices. So I will read this quote and then kick off with I guess we're doing 2 each tonight, and then we'll, talk about some other women directors. So I'll start with my number 2. And so Margaret Atwood said, "Why do men feel threatened by women?" I asked a male friend of mine. "They're afraid that women will laugh at them," he said, "undercut their worldview." Then I asked some women students in a poetry seminar that I was giving, "Why do women feel threatened by men?" And they said, "They're afraid of being killed." So that kind of set my differences. Men are being afraid of being made fun of and laughed at and kind of put down, and women are afraid of being murdered by these guys. So it kind of set the tone. And also, I picked 2 films directed by women that on the outset you would not think that a woman directed. And the one I'm going to start with is from 1993.
Oh.
It is going to be kind of a horror, not horror. And it is Boxing Helena, that is written and directed by Jennifer Lynch, daughter of David Lynch. It is her debut film that she directed when she was 25 years old. And this film stars Julian Sands, Bill Paxton, Sherilyn Flynn, and Art Garfunkel. And
That's right. I forgot
It
about
is-
Art Garfunkel.
Yep.
I
little
remember
Art Garfunkel.
Sherilyn Fenn at the peak of her powers. This was coming right speaking Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
of
right
her
after
powers.
she
Yeah.
came on from Twin Peaks.
Good one.
So this film is about Nick Kavanagh, a lonely surgeon obsessed with a woman named Helena, who he once had an intimate experience with. A lot of people were attached to this film. Madonna was supposed to play Helena, and she turned it down. Kim Basinger was then in line to play Helena, and she backed out of the film, saying it was going to be career suicide, and ended up getting sued and filing bankruptcy because she had to pay $9 million to the production company because she had a verbal agreement to pay this. And the reason she thought it was career suicide is that because Nick, who is in love with Helena, brings her to his house under false pretenses. And as she's trying to get away, she's hit and run by a car. So he she's hit by a car in a hit and run. So he takes her into his home, and in order to fix her legs, amputates them, and then holds her captive and ends up cutting off her both arms and both legs to keep her in his home with him.
How did this not make our horror medicine show?
Well,
medical malpractice.
It should be, because he is he's a surgeon, so this definitely fits that malpractice box when you're doing home surgeries. It didn't go straight horror. There are no blood and no guts in this film at all. The horror is all psychological. And then it also, when it debuted, got an NC-17 rating and then got cut to an R, because this will also be a very, very, very sexy thriller. This is not safe for work. Do not let the little kids watch this one. Because Helena is this completely sexual being who Nick, who is this like completely like impotent guy, just cannot get enough of. So in England, male critics were outraged by this film because they said that Lynch accused Englishmen of being sexually inept. Oh, no. So people were mad at this. Jennifer Lynch, when people asked her about like what made you do this, said that her grandmother had a Venus de Milo replica in her house. And while growing up, she always noticed that people would look at the statue and not think it was disturbing or broken, but as incredibly beautiful. So she kind of used that as her guide, to show that this woman who's being literally held in a box because she has no arms and legs and can't get away is something that in statue form people gaze at the beauty of the female form, but in this movie it goes into a psychotic
Liz,
weak-willed man who wants to render this woman powerless. So
I was going to ask you where this fits in with the Margaret Atwood quote, but I think you answered the question.
Yeah.
It's like both humiliation, shame, and the threat of death all at once. Like everyone wins with this film.
Yeah. And just as a Scariest Things note, our friends out in England, you can relax about this one. And this is, and a shout out to Chris Cleland, who's our loyal British super fan.
It's just Julian Sands in this movie. And in the 90s, Julian Sands was having a moment. So this was like at the kind of like top of his game. Not around as much anymore. So some of the younger viewers may not know who he is, but
and
definitely this movie is worth a watch.
Oh yeah.
Bill Paxton in it. He kept some of his pants from his previous movie, Near Dark. So he's in his leather pants and being this like kind of like, he even says like, she's kicking him out and he's like, hasta whatever, from like Terminator. I mean, he's just, it is not winning awards for dialogue or anything, but this is a really creepy, horrifying movie. Horror, not horror. When guys watch it, maybe they won't see that it's complete horror. When girls watch it, this is absolute
that's
and utter horror.
Oy, oy, oy,
yeah,
oy.
it's so Boxing Helena, 1993.
Nice.
Available to stream on YouTube, but none of the other streaming outlets have this one for free.
Oh, interesting.
I just want to say something about the title of the film, Boxing Helena. I remember when it came out and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And I just connected it to the, chopping off the arms and legs and keeping her boxed, I guess, on the shelf or something. But it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago that I heard the term boxing in terms of domestic control and domestic abuse.
Oh, interesting.
Where men box their wives or
right.
girlfriends by basically keeping them from their other social friends, family, keeping them like kind of locked from the outside world. So it's really an interesting play on a couple different levels about men's need or desire to control women.
Like back in the day when in Chinese culture where you would get these tiny shoes and bind their feet so you couldn't run away and that kind of stuff. Right. It's the same. Yeah. The scary shit brought to the 1990s.
Yeah. Helena wished her feet were bound, trust me. But she didn't have any feet by the time she got them. So it's an interesting film that just was kind of like from the get-go, I don't know, not like ruined, but it had controversy with actresses and everybody dropping out, saying it was like too crazy and career suicide. And then it's super 90s. You will definitely, there is no other time frame that this movie could have been made. It is 100% 90s. The soundtrack is 90s. Everybody in it is 90s, but it's definitely a thinker.
Even the rating is 90s too, because like I don't know that you can find a film that's NC-17 anymore.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
I think everything has been compressed to PG-13 at best.
well,
Or
R.
well, what they will do is they'll
this is
just
definitely NC-17 for sex, not for any violence or anything.
I think nowadays what they would do is they would just forego a theatrical release and release it unrated.
Right. Exactly.
Go straight to
Right.
streaming.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't even know when was the last time there was an NC-17 film.
Oh, good Lord.
We'll get back to you on that one. We'll
Yep.
get back to you on that one.
Well, let's let our.
So I'm going to kick it over to the Portland area. You guys, who's going next?
Let's have Gwen go.
Yes.
Our guest of honor.
Oh boy.
All right.
So I picked a film from, well, it made its festival run in 2016 and then was general release 2017. Although I don't think that it really had a wide theatrical release, and that is the French film Raw by writer-director Julia Ducournau.
just
Eric's favorite.
Just sidebar. I promised Liz that I would not pick Raw.
Said he couldn't pick it.
What? Because it's a go-to move for me.
Yep.
But I had heard a lot about this one when it was doing the festival circuits, and I think it finally came. It was either on Amazon Prime or Netflix. I'm not sure if it's still out there. But one, I don't know, it was like nominated for like 45 different awards through all the festivals that it played at, and then won 22 of them. And one of them being at Sitges, the Carnet Jove Jury Award winner for Best Feature, which I think is a pretty big deal. And it won a bunch of like Best First Feature Films and Best First Director awards.
Because I don't believe Coralie Fargia. I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name, but I think that's still her only film. She hasn't come up with anything else yet. Really looking forward to see what she does next.
Mm-hmm. That's a different person, though.
Is that Coralie Fargia? No, Julia Ducournau.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking.
Come on,
Revenge.
Eric.
So Coralie did Revenge, which I haven't seen for various reasons.
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't really dig like rape revenge stories all that much.
Great.
So, but yeah, Julia Ducournau. A lot of times when writers or artists or filmmakers make their first film, we see it as coming out like, oh, it just came out, but really it's been they've been working on that film kind of their whole life up to that point. And so when they don't immediately produce something else, like we have to cut them a little slack.
Well, it makes
because they have to, kind of regroup and like pull from like, hey, what do I want to say next? What story do I need to tell next? Because usually the first story they tell is the one that's been like burning a hole in their brain.
Right.
And that's usually why I think a lot of directors fall for the sophomore slump, is that they try to their next film is not their lifelong love. Mm-hmm. They've done that one, and now it's like, well, what do you got next?
Well, and I noticed too, like a lot of the female directors from the 1970s and 1980s, they did a ton of work, but it was mostly in the form of music videos or Love Boat episodes or short films. And they've rarely got that opportunity to do the full-blown feature-length film, and but there was still like an incredible amount of background to their overall work.
For sure. So for anyone new to the podcast and hasn't heard all the episodes where they talked about Raw already, it's about a young woman who's going to vet school. Her whole family is vets. They're all vegetarians. But when she gets to vet school, there's like this hazing initiation ritual where they make them eat rabbit liver. And she's like, no, I don't really want to do this. And they're like basically she's forced to do this. Otherwise she's just going to completely be an outcast for her whole time there. But so she eats this rabbit liver and things start to awaken in her, and she develops a taste for flesh.
Yes, in one of the most notoriously cringeworthy scenes of the last decade, the realization, the finger scene, and when you see it, you will know what I'm talking about.
Eric,
beautiful scene.
You put this in your best gateway cannibal films. Yes, or did Liz? I can't remember. One of the two of you did.
Oh, I put it on so many lists.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Eric's got it on all his lists. Yeah.
But I like this film because it's kind of, it's not over ambitious. It's telling kind of a story of one woman coming of age, and the cannibalism kind of acts as a vehicle for her discovering not only her appetite for flesh, but her appetite for flesh in a sexy way.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it also has a really interesting sister story.
Mm-hmm.
And as the secrets get revealed about the relationship between her older sister, there's a legacy involved here, and it's very interesting. And at first, you think that your sister's just being a total ass about the whole situation, and but then you realize what's going on, and it's got so many interesting layers to it. For a fairly simple story, it's very, very textured.
Well, it explores a lot of different things all at once, and that time of your life, you're 18. You're almost an adult, but not quite an adult. You are going through all these different changes. Your body's changing. Your mind is becoming fully developed. You're learning all these new things. You're meeting all these new people, being exposed to a bunch of different experiences. And it's interesting to me that as she goes through this, she kind of finds her agency as a person, because there's this question of like nature versus nurture, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to eat people's flesh because that's what you're used to, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where the whole family's in on it, or is it a genetic thing? So, like when she makes that decision to, should I leave that there, or should I? Maybe I want to put this in my mouth.
Don't do it.
So, like the hazing, she's kind of pushed into a decision that she doesn't necessarily agree with, and being raised vegetarian, she didn't have a choice about that as a child.
Right.
And then as pre-liver, post-liver consumption, it's interesting to see the development of her as more of her own person and figuring out what she wants. And it's a little horrific way to express that, but it's fun.
Oh yeah. So.
And she has a film in pre-production right now that she has written and directed called Titan.
Oh, nice.
And this is her...
Or Titan, because it ends with an E.
Liz, is this her second film?
Yep. No, she's actually done some other films.
Okay.
Like it looks like French kind of TV movies.
Okay.
But so this will be one that she's written and directing. And it says 2020, so we'll see.
All right. Very good.
Mike?
All right. I, of course, took a slightly different approach to this. I really wanted to talk about this director more than the film, because I've talked about the film plenty. Mm-hmm. But this is a woman director who has been in the game for a minute or two, and she directed a film called Megapython versus Gatoroid. Featuring both Tiffany and Debbie Gibson, believe it or not. Both of them are in this film. That's not the film I'm talking about. This, of course, I'm talking about Mary Lambert, who directed Pet Sematary 1 and Pet Sematary 2. Megapython versus Gatorade was one of her latest films. I think she's slowed down her production as she's gotten a little older. She was born in 1951.
Okay.
And that's what I was kind of referencing earlier when I was talking about sort of a long career that's like taken many twists and turns, and you're sort of forced into doing, she did videos for Annie Lennox and Mick Jagger and Whitney Houston and Motley Crue and Queensryche and Sting and Debbie Harry and the Tom Tom Club and Madonna and Janet Jackson. Wow. She did all sorts of videos, but then she sort of ebbed and flowed out of TV. She ebbed and flowed out of film. She did, I think, largely gravitate towards, Mary Lambert largely gravitated towards horror, although she explored lots and lots of different things, which I thought was interesting. The other interesting thing that I found about Mary Lambert, which is her younger sister, is former U.S. Senator Blanche Lincoln of Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
What a Dickensian life she's led.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to Pet Sematary 1 and Pet Sematary 2, both of these films are really, really exceptional. Obviously, one more so than the other. But I think the thing that she brought to the table, it seemed to me, in looking back at her career and looking at the dynamic she brought to horror, was that she brought an interesting sensitivity to both sort of the family dynamic, it appeared, and I felt like she brought an interesting dynamic in terms of, and I don't know, I mean, obviously Stephen King wrote this, but I mean, she could have easily written it out of the script, but the relationship between her and her sister, I thought was really kind of interesting. And you saw both from a caregiver standpoint and a familial standpoint, the difficulties that like women are hoisted into in terms of that caregiving role. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I don't know that a male director, I mean, even though, yes, again, Stephen King, it's in the book, he wrote it, but that I don't know that a male director may have given it quite the exact same purchase and care that she brought to the table. And I just thought it was really interesting. And now knowing a little bit more about who she is and kind of her whole sort of worldview and whatnot, it seemed to resonate even more with me.
Yeah, with the loss of Gage, right?
Right.
And how that gets played out. I think one of my picks that I've got has a family, a loss of children,
right?
Thing, and the motherhood responsibilities and and the fear of failing of being a good mother,
right?
Is a pretty, I would assume, not to mansplain anything. I'm assuming that is a terrifying for many women. That is something that if they're going to hold anything near and dear, it's to protect the children at all costs.
Right.
Though I think actually neither Gwen nor Liz being moms.
Nope. Yeah.
Childless.
So I guess all four of us in the Mike could speak as a father.
Yes.
I think that is a societal as a societal norm, protecting children because they are the most vulnerable members of our tribal association is a kind of a key foundation. What am I trying to say?
Yeah, no,
one of those like universal truths, like you protect the kids.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And but I do like the way that Pet Sematary handled. Yeah. And it's granted it's a Stephen King book, but the movie, it's the heartbreaker.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. All right, Eric, what do you got?
I have a 2014 film by when I went into this exercise of looking at female directors, this is I consider this to be most likely to succeed, in that there are so many of the directors who are new to the scene and have got less 2 films or less under their belt.
Right.
And so part of this is forecasting who I think is going to have a great career as a director, given enough opportunities. And I selected Anna Lily Amanpour and her film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Oh, yeah.
And this is, I mean, it looks like it could have been done by Orson Welles.
Yeah.
It is a gorgeous noir, largely quiet film. It's an Iranian vampire film, and the ghost is simply known as the girl, played by Sheila Vandy, and she sort of hangs out on the street, watching things go by and preying upon some of the street elements, like a ne'er-do-well pimp/drug dealer who she drops in on and eventually drains of blood, and runs into our male protagonist who the drug dealer stole. Well, didn't really steal his car, but he absconded his car when our Arash, who is the protagonist, when his father couldn't afford to pay his exorbitant drug overdue payments. So he took his fabulous T-Bird from him, and then the guy, Arash, tries to go back and make a deal to get his car back, and he sees this young woman leaving the apartment, and then he stumbles in, and it's like, oh, he's dead, but then he, through circumstance, falls in love with the young vampire, and it's hypnotic. I think. The vampire is also, I think they're co-protagonists. She's a very sympathetic monster. They don't really go into great depth about how she became this way or the nature of vampirism, but it is, I think, she's an observer, and she's an observer of society and the way that there's the drug dealer, and then there's a prostitute, and how all these people get treated, and she is sort of this passive observer, and then she's also feeding off of it, but she's got a moral code. Like there's a little boy who she runs into, who's a little bit kind of a curious, mischievous little boy, and he starts following her around. Then she surprises him, and you think that she's going to just kill him and drink his blood, and it's like, are you a good boy? and he promises to be a good boy, and she threatens, and she bares her fangs, and it's like, be a good boy or I'm going to come and haunt you, and which is all these elements I think were really delicately handled, and there are visions of like oil derricks that are taking oil from the ground, and you think of vampirism and taking the precious fluids out of the body, and so all these fantastic sort of illusions. There's also, somewhat unexplained, there's a riverbed filled with bodies that they just sort of like an open grave. So just some stark, beautiful black and white imagery. Classic.
Yeah, I didn't that one threw me. That image. When I was watching the film, I was like, wait, what? Yeah. Why? Is this like some commentary on?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and I think that because there's very little exposition, there's make of it what you will.
Right.
Right.
And
I also, though it's an Iranian, it's in Farsi.
Yeah.
The production, I think it's someplace like Bakersfield, or San Bernardino, someplace in.
Yeah, she grew up in America and was born in England.
Yep.
Which explains her next film that she's doing. You know what her next film is?
What's that?
A remake of Cliffhanger.
I just read that, but
Really?
she's also
Really?
Sly Stallone is
an
not
all-female remake of Cliffhanger.
Oh.
Well, it said Jason Momoa is going to be in it, so.
Oh well,
He's not
none of the ladies
exactly-
will fight with that one.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think
She's also doing one here in New Orleans right now. It's probably wrapping up because maybe fingers crossed for Overlook, called Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon, starring Kate Hudson.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did. I think the other film with Jason Momoa that she did The Bad Batch, which is
Right.
sort of a post.
I didn't see it.
I kind of heard mixed reviews on that one, and this is and going back to what Gwen was saying about saving up, that you've got all these ideas and they come and you do this masterpiece as your first film. Nobody's calling Bad Batch a masterpiece, and so this is going to be okay.
But they might be calling Cliffhanger remake a masterpiece. Come
Yeah,
on.
maybe.
Come
We don't
on.
know.
That's happening.
So I
have hope.
Have you
I
seen
guess.
The Bad Batch?
No, I haven't
You
seen The
haven't
Bad
seen
Batch.
I have not yet. But
Liz, did you see it?
No, I haven't seen it because I didn't hear
You guys
great
should
things.
watch it.
Okay.
So there was a lot of mixed reviews, but when it came onto Netflix,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. We have Netflix,
Yeah.
Hulu, and Amazon Prime, so I can never keep straight which one is which.
So you're saying like stream it for quote unquote free.
Right. But no, I actually really enjoyed it. I understand why there are people who didn't like it, and I think a lot of their criticisms are wrong. But it wasn't a perfect movie, and she does kind of a lot with it. But I think there was some criticism of like, oh, it wasn't feminist enough, or like you're expecting this heavy political social commentary, and there is political commentary for sure, and some social commentary in there. But it's also a story. Like, she's a woman. She's going to have women's point of view in her story, but not everything has to be a statement.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the kind of things that I'm hoping that eventually it will be commonplace enough for female directors to be directing movies that it doesn't have to be a feminist movie every take, right? That it is take direct what you know, and if that happens to come from a feminist standpoint, that's great. But if it's not, you don't need to go there.
And you don't need to create a masterpiece every time out. You don't need to create A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night every single film.
No, but it would have been interesting if she was able to replicate that. She's got a lot of talent, a great visual eye, and she's young.
Yep.
So I do think that she has a high likelihood of success in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Her kind of visual style and like the look and feel of her work definitely has a distinct voice.
Yeah.
I'm putting The Bad Batch on my list.
There you go. Get a review up.
I still don't have the stomach for Raw, though.
Bad Batch has cannibals in it too.
Oh no!
Yeah.
See, I'm not the only one. Okay, Liz, back to you.
Okay, so my next choice is a movie that some have said could never have been made. It had attached to it David Cronenberg, Oliver Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio, but ended up with Mary Herron and Christian Bale. So this is 2000's American Psycho, based on the 1991 book by Bret Easton Ellis. The screenplay was co-written by Mary Herron and Guinevere Turner and directed by Mary Herron. And American Psycho is the story of Patrick Bateman, who is it's set in the 80s, like 1987. Patrick Bateman is a vice president at a financial firm on Wall Street. He's a douchebag. He's out at clubs every night doing coke, treating girls like shit. And then also he is a psychopathic killer on the side. So Bret Easton Ellis's book came out in 1991 and people went a little crazy about it. It is about 400 pages and really just he started out as satire, but then kind of goes into like complete exploitation where it's pages and pages of scenes of torture and murder of exclusively women by Patrick Bateman. And I don't know Bret Easton Ellis, but based on his other works and listening and to some of his podcasts and reading some interviews with him, Bret Easton Ellis is really he loves Bret Easton Ellis and thinks that like nothing can go wrong as long as he does it. And he's seems like a kind of pompous misogynist. So Mary Herron and Turner, Guinevere Turner, kind of take this movie or the storyline and flip it on its head and make Patrick Bateman is a completely pathetic character. So they turn it almost into a satire instead of this exploitation. They take a lot of the violence to women off screen. So you see the aftermath, like you do know that women are being murdered, but you'll see a blood spatter on his face or things like that, and just show how Bateman is. One of the things with the characters is people are always mistaking him for something else. He's nothing special. There's the famous business card scene where it's just a bunch of these guys and all their business cards look exactly the same and they all say vice presidents. They're all nothing special. There's nothing that sets this guy apart, in the world that makes him special. And it also goes with that Margaret Atwood quote of that he is just worried about being, made fun of, not special, looked down on, and he thinks he's hot shit. So it's it's strange. It's something you wouldn't think that a woman would write the screenplay for and direct because it is so utterly misogynistic, just the character. But the way they turn it into like a black comedy and make him look so pathetic kind of puts that feminist spin on it.
And that, the film or the book rather, Liz, too, is like is so male centric and so male heavy because of the 400 pages, probably like 150 of the 400 pages are like descriptions of like stereo equipment and Brooks Brothers suits.
Yep. Like a diatribe on the album "Sports" by Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah, he just
his
in
like
that
workout regime.
He just drones on and on and on about the most mundane crap.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it is super interesting that a female director would take that book, which is kind of a pile of garbage, really, and turn it into something kind of interesting and give it new, and I think probably far more interesting life than anything Bret Easton Ellis could produce.
I also think it's
kind of even though I do love the book and I am a Bret Easton Ellis fan. It's with a big, not like a grain of salt, like an entire, like one of those big giant salt things from like an Italian restaurant. Like a lot of salt with Bret Easton Ellis. I love him, but Jesus Christ, he's like a pompous misogynist who is so full of himself. He is kind of the embodiment of this 80s attitude that is completely dying out, and that's probably why we haven't heard too much from him in a while.
Bret Easton Ellis, if you're listening, we've got an interview seat at the table to get grilled by our own Liz Williams.
And his last book was something about like, I don't even know what the title was, but it was about him talking about like pretty much like white man rage. It was called like On Being White or something ridiculous.
Oh, no.
So, you know,
I thought
he is.
Wasn't his last book like a return to less than zero or something like that? Or did that happen?
Yeah,
or am I imagining
last fiction book was that was a return to less than zero, and he also did one called Lunar Park that I might have to do a review of because it's my favorite one of his. That is Bret Easton Ellis writing as himself, and Patrick Bateman comes back and like makes a appearance, and his characters go in and out of the other books, but I don't know. He's not a lover of women, I don't think.
No.
Not a sensitive man. He's not exactly woke.
Yeah.
You are welcome to come on the podcast
He
and
is not.
defend yourself, but we're not going to go easy on you, Bret Easton Ellis.
For sure.
He's like the
Come on,
is he
Bret.
the McGee of the literary world?
He might be.
Yeah, huh? Seriously.
Okay.
All right.
All right. What you
Moving
got?
on.
Gwen.
I struggled with this one a little bit because there's two. I'm still like trying to debate which one. Okay, I'm just gonna go with my original.
Do
my
whatever
original
you
pick.
want. Put them both in.
So this one is from 2009. It was a big budget film. With Diablo Cody wrote, Karen Kusama directed, and it's Jennifer's Body.
Oh, interesting.
Diablo Cody is known for writing the screenplay for Juno. She wrote, I think she created United States of Terra with Toni Collette. And Young Adult, the movie Young Adult with Charlize Theron, where she comes back home and like I think she's almost 30 and has like no direction.
Oh, right.
Moves back in with her parents.
Okay.
And director Karen Kusama, known for Girl Fight. She also directed Charlize Theron in Aeon Flux and wrote and directed The Invitation. And she did a segment of XX. Yeah. So in Jennifer's Body, Megan Fox plays Jennifer Check, the hot girl at their high school, the head cheerleader. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Every guy wants her. Every girl wants to be her. Amanda Seyfried plays her best friend, Anita, a.k.a. Needy. And they've been best friends for life. Jennifer's always dragging Needy along on her excursions. So when she gets tickets to see this band play at like a roadside bar, she makes Needy go with her. And these guys it's called Low Shoulder, and they're such douchebags. Played by the main guy's played by Adam Brody, and it's just like the perfect kind of caricature of the cookie cutter bro bands from that era.
Yep.
Nothing really distinguishable about their music or their appearance or their performance, except that they have a congress with the dark forces, and basically peg Jennifer as the gorgeous, the pretty girl, but she's probably prude. They peg her as a tease, which is absolutely not true, because at some point they say something about being a virgin, and she's like, I'm not even a backdoor virgin. So she's completely experienced in that regard. And they, they say like, hey, come with us in this van. And Needy's like, hell no, I'm not getting in that van. Like, and you shouldn't either. And she's like, oh, never mind. I'm just going to go. So she goes off with these guys, and they, she thinks she's going to get busy with them or something, but they end up sacrificing her to the powers of darkness for fame and fortune. Although, except that since she is not a virgin, the demon just ends up possessing her permanently, turning her basically into a succubus that needs to eat and feed on men in order to stay young and beautiful.
Yes.
and light her tongue on fire, that's a shocking scene. You can see it in the trailer. I'm not spoiling anything.
The rest of the film is Needy trying to figure out what's going on with Jennifer, and then trying to figure out how to save her or stop her from eating all the boys in school. But I really liked this one because it kind of subverts the possession genre where, like in The Exorcist, Regan is just completely taken over by an entity. She has no control over what's going on. We don't even really know if she's a passenger or observer while all of this is happening, or if she's just kind of out of it. Like at the end, it kind of suggests that she doesn't know anything that happened. Right. But where Regan is, a complete victim.
Jennifer's got some control.
Jennifer has
right. A lot of control.
Stuff going on.
Yes. Yeah.
And some of it is being a slave to the hunger and this desire to continue to look good, because if she hasn't fed in a while, she starts looking really shitty. Like her skin is pale and her hair gets greasy and stringy. And I think there's a moment where she says something like everyone else. Like my hair is greasy and stringy like everyone else. Like, because she never would have been caught dead looking like that before. And it's interesting that Needy is named Needy because she isn't actually all that needy. Like, she is kind of the one who props up Jennifer. Jennifer's always looking to her for support and approval. And she ends up, Needy ends up being the hero of the story and kind of the final girl, I guess. But it didn't do well with critics or audience when it came out, and it was kind of a sleeper cult hit. And I think people are appreciating it more now.
Yeah. No, I didn't see it until a couple of years ago after, well after it was released. But I think it's gotten to be a big cult hit after the fact.
I think Megan Fox needs to get back to horror.
I really loved her in this role.
I did too.
Everyone had seen her in Transformers, like, oh, she's the hot girl or whatever.
Right.
She had made some comments, I think, in interviews. She's pretty unfiltered, and that didn't make her popular with a lot of people.
Right.
But I think she did an excellent job in this film. Like, she showed that she could actually act instead of just being eye candy. And I loved that she showed up in New Girl as Nick's girlfriend, like the pharmaceutical rep.
Right.
So I would love to see her in more roles. Yeah.
And Megan Fox, if you're listening, we would love. This podcast is unfiltered, so you can come on and say whatever you want.
That's right. Make some news, Megan. All right, Mike, what have you got for your number 2?
Well, I picked a film.
Or your number 1. Right?
My number 1. I picked a film and a director. This director said, and I quote, "I think Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest art films of all time." I, of course, am talking about the same person Gwen was talking about, Karen Kusama. The film I picked is The Invitation, though, which is a couple years after. This was 2014, if I'm not mistaken. This is a film that I reviewed on the Scariest Things podcast website, scariestthings.com, 1T. The thing that I liked about it was that what she brought to the table in this case was sort of the handling of all these like really, really complex relationships in the course of one evening. A gentleman and his new girlfriend are invited to his ex-wife's house for a dinner party, and at the dinner party are a whole host of people that the husband or the ex-husband is unfamiliar with, has never met. Intermingled in between those people is also his longtime group of friends, and he's forced to deal with the ex-wife, who turns out may or may not be in a cult, and the new friends, who may or may not be in a cult, and the old friends, who may or may not be in a cult. What I said about the film at the time when I reviewed it was that the manufactured tension is done exceptionally well, and when it explodes, it's a mighty eruption. The invitation ends in a rather bleak yet hopeful way, and it's safe to say that Karen Kusama knows her way around a story. To be able to convey such polemic emotions in one scene is quite a skill, and Miss Kusama handles it well. The Invitation is just a really, really good film, and it's for all the reasons I've outlined. But the thing I really, really liked about it is that she plays it incredibly subtly, right? Where there's all these things that you would think, all right, strike one, strike two, strike three. There's all these little things, these injects that come into throughout the course of the evening. And you would think normally you would go, you know what? It's probably time that I leave. I'm just going to get out of here. But she does it in such a subtle way that the characters, it's reasonable and understandable that the characters would go, all right, maybe I'll have one more drink. I'll hang around a little longer, and then something else weird happens. But she plays it again in such a subtle way that it makes sense, and it's believable that the main character, Will, I think is the main character's name, that Will would not go running and screaming out of the house, and he gets to hang around for the final act, where you see whether or not the cult is real and what happened. I'm not going to spoil the cult, but whether or not the cult is real and what is ultimately happening. Mm-hmm. I really liked it. I really liked Jennifer's Body. I really liked The Invitation. I really liked Girl Fight, which I think was her first film. Apparently, Karen Kusama, she got her start, as we all do, doing lots of weird, odd jobs. She did podcasting, restaurant work. She was doing house painting. She was a nanny. She ultimately nannied with John Sayles, and that was kind of not necessarily her entree into film, but that sort of helped kind of form her worldview, and he kind of helped her along and get together Girl Fight. But The Invitation, I can't recommend it enough. It's a total sleeper. I think it's still available. I think you can stream it pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty sure I saw it on Netflix, but I do recommend folks watch it because it's great. And Jennifer's Body is also a great film, and I am super duper excited to see what Karen Kusama has to do next.
All right.
Me too.
Eric, do you know what it is?
Well, but I'm going to stay on the Karen Kusama bandwagon here.
Uh-oh, you do know what it is. Oh, I know what you're going to talk about, which I didn't even mention. It's a film you love.
XX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one I didn't mention.
So this is this is a perfect railroad right into my...
So tell us a little bit about Karen Kusama, Eric, that we don't already know.
Well, I don't know what her next film is. You can get on the IMDb
I will do that.
and check out on this. But this is actually an anthology, and it was done back in 2017 with the expressed desire to promote female directors.
Right.
And we got directors at multiple levels in their careers. I think Karen Kusama was probably, at this point, the one with the biggest track record. There's four stories that are disconnected. It's an anthology, a lot like Tales of Terror or a lot of the how anthology films end up feeling like a bit like EC Comics, where they're morality tales, and that kind of stuff. I think that XX follows in the same vein. That stylistically they're all very different, and the first film that they did, and I'm going to try and avoid doing what I did for Holidays. If you remember that discussion,
yes,
because
it was like a 20-minute breakdown.
Yep,
but an explicit breakdown.
I will be shorter about this, and it helps also that there's only 4 stories rather than 12. So with the first one, I think is the best one, and I alluded to the family, the mother taking care of her family, Jovanka Vukovic did a short called The Box with a family riding on the subway, and there's this weirdo who's got this mysterious box, and little boy asks, "What's in the box?" And he shows him, and apparently it is so disturbing that the son loses his appetite permanently. And despite the fact that the mom's like, "Oh, honey, you're not hungry?" He's like, "I'm going to go to bed without, I don't need dinner." And then this goes on for a few days, and she keeps on coming to the table, and it's like food porn, right? She rolls out these things. It seriously is. She rolls out these fantastic feasts. It's like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. And the rest of the family's like chowing down, and he's just sitting there not touching it. And then he just starts emaciating. And then the dad sits down with the boy and it's like, "Son, what's going on?" And the boy whispers something into Dad's ear, and then Dad doesn't want to eat. And it's the whole thing where the mom's lost control of the situation. The whole family's starving. She's doing her very best to try and keep everybody alive. Takes them to the hospital, and they just die. And they're right. And it's tragic, but that was a brilliant, when they start talking about sort of the female perspective, this is explicitly the mother as caregiver. The biggest fear is like that I can't protect him. I'm doing my very best. Don't you like my cooking? So that was, I found that very, it was very compelling, very sad, and dreadful.
Right.
Maybe not outright scary, but it makes you feel hollowed out at the end. It has a real impact. The second film is by St. Vincent, the musician,
right.
Famed musician. She did the birthday cake. Very weird short. Mother tries to throw a surprise birthday party for her pants wedding son, only to find that Dad is dead in the office, and she goes full weekend weekend at Bernie's with the dad, trying to disguise the fact that there's a birthday party going to happen and the dad's got to be there. So she sticks him into a panda suit and props him up at the table where the birthday party happens, and all the kids go around and go, "Oh, look at the panda," and the kid's like, "Dad, Dad, Dad," and it's like, "No, don't bother Dad. He's in the panda suit," And it's so the frantic mom trying to do the best birthday party ever with a dead man in the living room,
and more pants wedding ensues.
Yeah, the pants wedding was just it's like this was like Pee Wee Herman, weird short, worth the price of admission as long as you're not expecting classic horror for that one.
Sure.
But you'll get the sort of the traditional kind of road trip horror thing from Roxanne Benjamin. In the third one, it's called Don't Fall. Camping goes awry when a group of characters discovers some hieroglyphics depicting a winged creature. One of the women in the group morphs into the creature and starts taking out her traveling companions. Very simple. And I don't exactly know where the female perspective is coming from necessarily, but it might actually go back to my argument of you don't have to do it. And,
right.
It's like just show your chops, do a fun film. This felt cut straight out of Creepshow. Right. It felt it was right at home doing that, and then final chapter was Karen Kusama's Her Only Living Son, which is a single mother with her teenage boy who has social engagement issues. He's sullen and not awkward with his classmates, and as he turns 18. It becomes clear that he is actually Satan's child, and mom has to figure out, how to handle. I've got the son of the devil, who is, puberty apparently or the 18th birthday is the trigger for full blown demon, and it is, it's a mother's dilemma,
right?
How much do I love my son? Even though he may be the very embodiment of evil. So 4 short films, all handled quite well, stitched together with some amazing stop-motion puppetry work from, and I don't have that director's name, but it really is a nice sort of a sampler platter for female directors, and all of which I'd love to see if St. Vincent gets a shot at a whole film. She has some Tim Burton in her.
Right.
Lord knows, as a musician, she's got a lot of quirky, funky things. She's an unreal guitar player.
Right.
If you haven't, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but she's she did some stuff. She stood in for Kurt Cobain at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
The Nirvana induction.
Yeah, and killed it. So go check this one's out on Shudder.
And you know what this means too.
What's that?
When three of us talk about a specific director, that's not an invitation to come on the podcast. You're actually required
That's right.
to come. So Karen Kusama is now required to come on the podcast.
That's right. Have a mirror right there and say her name 3 times so she'll appear.
Karen Kusama, Karen Kusama, Karen Kusama. She's just going to appear.
Oh, now you've done it. Now she's going to haunt you.
I don't know. Well, okay, as long
me.
as she'll come on the podcast,
Roxanne Benjamin is the.
Oh, sorry,
other
Roxanne
director.
Benjamin. Did I not say Roxanne Benjamin? Don't
I
fall.
don't think so.
Yeah, no, that's what I have written down. But yeah, Roxanne. Actually, if you go up to Seattle at what they used to call the Experience the Music Project, now they call it I think Mopop. They have a horror exhibit in the, downstairs, and they have one of the films that sort of, they have a documentary bit with Roxanne Benjamin talking about making her short. And then they have XX playing downstairs on a loop with Roxanne Benjamin doing a voiceover and saying how much fun she had doing it. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So Liz, I think you were hinting that there were some other directors that you filled up your plate so high with directors you wanted to talk about that you might want to just throw in a couple of other ones.
We can call
this.
This is our grave digging.
It is our grave digging. You bet.
Yeah, so I've got I'll give you 3, or actually it's 4 lady directors. One is a team. So first one will be Jocelyn DeBoer and Don Lube. Their feature film called Greener Grass was at the Overlook, and I didn't get a chance to see it, but it's now on Hulu. And while it's not complete horror, it is surrealist, crazy, weird stuff with some horror elements, and it's really, really funny. And they wrote it, directed, and star in it, along with Beck Bennett from Saturday Night Live. I deleted the girl's name, the girl who plays Janet from The Good Place. So some comedy faces that you've seen, and it's just like a weird little slice of creepy suburbia. So that's Jocelyn DeBoer and Don Lube. Chelsea Stardust, who we love, yes. Satanic Panic. And also she did one of the Hulu's Into the Dark, which are the Bloom House. Each month they were putting out a feature-length film that would coincide with a holiday. And she did one called All That We Destroy, which was the Mother's Day film that says, on Mother's Day, a geneticist discovers that her son has the tendencies of a serial killer, and in order to find a cure, she clones him to release his violent urges. And that one's starring Samantha Morton. It's really good.
Oh, cool.
And then Hannah McPherson, who also did a Hulu Into the Dark film called Pure for Father's Day, that says, on Father's Daughter's Day, several teen girls at a purity retreat participate in a secret ritual, and they start to see a supernatural entity. The girls need to focus on the demon Lilith that they have unleashed, as well as their father's expectations. So just a couple up and coming. And those are some women directors who are making waves in horror. Mike, what do you got?
Another woman making her waves in the horror community, although she is a younger director. She was born in 1990, and she was 2 years old when the original Candyman came out. This is Nia DaCosta, and she is directing the remake of Candyman, which comes out June 12th this year. She's taking an interesting twist, it appears, on the Candyman remake.
Okay.
Candyman is returning to the now gentrified Cabrini Green for more Candyman-like shenanigans. Safe to say there will be bumblebees at some point.
And Tony Todd's going to be back, but
Tony Todd is playing, I think, a sort of a lesser role in the Candyman universe.
Yahya Abdul-Mateen.
I think that you got it close. You were close.
Black Manna.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yep. Gwen, do you have any other directors that you? You should.
Yeah,
you of all people should know of upcoming directors.
So I think ones to watch are, even though she hasn't done anything since The Love Witch came out in 2016, Anna Biller.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I'm really hoping that she's working on something new, and maybe it's just taking her a long time because she is hand making all the costumes and sets herself again. But hopefully she's getting some help with that. Because, it's been, almost 4 years since we've had anything from her. And she's done some short films and other movies. But I really like her kind of quirky sensibility and like the perfect homage that she does to those 60s, 70s exploitation films. And I loved The Love Witch. That was the other one that I was trying to decide between. Also, Gigi Saul Guerrero, who's her feature film debut was for the Blumhouse Into the Dark series with Culture Shock.
Oh, okay.
Was about the immigration commentary. The woman who crosses the border, but then she wakes up. I don't remember if they're abducted, but she wakes up and it's like this perfect little American slice of Americana, and everything's perfect and beautiful and like Stepford wifey, and come to find out that not as all as it seems.
Of course.
And the other person was, let's consult my long list here. Lee Janiak. She did Honeymoon. That was 2014.
Oh, I liked that one.
I don't know if
that was
she's normally a director or a writer, but I would like to see more from her.
All right. Well, I've got a film or a director who I got introduced to through the Portland Horror Film Festival, and that's Jen Wexler, who did The Ranger. Punk rock in the bandits hiding in the woods, and Crazy Ranger, who you remember? What's the actor's name who played the Ranger? Do you remember?
Jeremy. I don't remember his last name. It's terrible.
It's like that guy.
That guy, he chewed up the scenery. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I think Jen Wexler is she's a prodigy of. I wish I had the information at hand, but
Jeremy Holm is his name.
Okay.
Holm, yeah.
So that one's sort of retro '80s popcorn fun, kind of old school, sort of in the woods, killing teenagers by one at a time with a final girl, with a punk rock kind of an aspect. That was fun.
Right. Does Jen Wexler have anything coming up? Do you know? You do not. Oh,
don't know.
All right.
At the moment.
All right.
But
we hope she does.
Yes. Again, that was her debut film, I believe, at the but the film wasn't actually the debut at Portland Horror Film Festival. I think it was playing at Overlook too. But that's a 2018 movie. Issa Lopez, who I have really high hopes for, who directed Tigers Are Not Afraid, which is urban.
I thought for sure you were
fairy
going
tale.
to pick that.
I loved that movie.
I thought for sure that was coming up.
It's a little light on the horror side.
Sure.
But that and I think I sort of crossed my directors up earlier. I had mentioned Coralie Fargia, who did Revenge, which is a rape revenge movie, but it is a spectacular movie. All rape revenge movies have the incredibly unsettling rape scene in it by nature, but this was not I Spit on Your Grave,
which had multiple,
which was prolonged and it was unwatchable for me. I Spit on Your Grave is just too hard, but Revenge,
Revenge is
easier. It's a beautiful movie to watch.
Yeah,
and it's shot in Morocco, and the Matilda Lutz, who's the lead actress, is fierce and turns in a performance unexpected of someone in a film like this. It was really cool, and the revenge is completely satisfying. The Saska sisters is another set of directors. They did American Mary. They did Rabid, which Mike
was pretty
you thought
terrible.
was pretty much a hot mess.
Pretty terrible film.
But they are.
They put David Cronenberg. They shamed the David Cronenberg name, and maybe that was the point. But
I feel like that show Elevator made them soft.
yeah.
So those are a few. Jennifer Kent, the Babadook, and she did another movie. It was sort of a Western, and here I am stumbling through without complete notes.
Called
here.
The Nightingale.
Yeah. But it wasn't. It was a Western with like supernatural elements, wasn't it?
I don't know. It's based on a book. I don't think it has any supernatural elements. I'm not sure, but I believe it's also a rape revenge.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Wind was a movie that came out, I think, last year, and I'm all of a sudden.
Was that Jennifer Kent as
Who
well?
made that?
No.
Oh.
This is
Emma
Tammy.
Eric's just listing female directors.
Yeah.
He's just
No, but these are. I mean, that was. But I think that when Emma Tammy and Jennifer Kent do movies that look very similar, and they also sort of share the look of some things like The Witch, very natural,
sure,
muted palettes, serious, somber movies,
right.
But I think what it's showing, and again, this was Emma Tammy's first major feature film. There's a lot of these women who are coming to the forefront now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
keep an eye out for them. This is it. It's growing, and with the help of Gwen, who's going to spur on a tidal wave of female directors to come through her free submission through February for.
Women in Horror Month for Portland Horror Film Festival.
Yep. Yes. We're cracking 40% this year.
Yes.
2020 20 submissions.
2021, 50%.
And like Ruth Bader Ginsburg
Yes.
asked how many women do you think should be on the Supreme Court? And she said 9. There have been 9 men. I feel the same way about the films.
Hallelujah.
Just hold on, Ruthie. One more year.
I know.
One more year.
One more year.
Okay. So, Liz, you want to take us out with a quote?
Sure. I've got the tagline from 1993's Boxing Helena. Beyond love, beyond obsession, there lies something that's beyond reason.
Boxing Helena. Go check it out.
Boxing Helena.